Hello anime fan, welcome back to What If Animes 2.0. So in this video you gonna see, what if Naruto fell in love with the female Itachi and wanted to marry her? This is part 1. And if you want more, then hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. So let's getting the video, and do check out the author of the story. He was an odd one, an underdog, she admitted. Which was ironic, to say the least, especially coming from such an impassive shell such as Izumi. But yes, he was rather different. Him being the container of the Kyuubi aside, this blonde boy was something else. She watched him intently from the day he was born, by strict orders of the council, always vigilant, surveying and assessing the boy, determining if said child was any threat to the well-being of the village. Slowly but surely she studied him. Beginning at the age of 13, she studied and evaluated his personality, watching him react with society, his team, which oddly enough consisted of her younger brother. He was sloppy, a wreck, careless, indecisive at some points, a menace. He lacked talent, he was improper, outspoken, loud, brash, and idiotic. He was a total mess, she noted, and there was no doubt in her mind that at this point the boy's only threat was his untrained mouth. She also noted his dismay, and how the villagers treated the blonde with such distaste. It was painstaking to watch the boy be treated with such prejudice for something that was self-determined the day of his birth. It was wrong to treat the child uncertain because of something he had no control of. It was wrong to make someone who had nothing and was alone feel so terrible. She felt sympathy, wishing the best, and even at some points wishing to hug the boy. Despite all of this, despite the unfair treatment, despite the child growing up with no parents, despite his lack of talent, and despite him being dead last, the boy had a drive that fueled the engines of his desires. She knew him well, and it was apparent that this boy contained not only the nine-tailed fox beast but a fire that burned with the will of any true shinobi. She was amazed by his resolve, his will and perseverance, his ability to overcome, his strong-willed and gentle nature, his ability to convert people's ideology through mere words, his love and interaction with his teammates. He changed her brother, even she could see that she saw it all. It was amazing. All traits of a truly honorable ninja. Naruto Uzumaki. Izumi watched intently as the young sun-kissed-haired genin fell, his battle with the sand genin with blood-red hair ending. A harsh jab sealing his victory. The Anbu captain with long jet-black hair neatly fixed into a ponytail gazed on, her face covered in the crimson-red bodily fluid known as blood. Not her blood by all means, no, was spectacular. Present Naruto's feet landed gracefully on the grassy moist floor of the training ground. The 17-year-old was practicing the effectiveness of his ninjutsu, the Rasen Shuriken. And if the magnificent crater was anything to judge by, it was defiantly effective. The young Junin, achieving said promotion little under 6 months prior, assessed the damage with a small grin. It was perfect, and when combined with natural energy via Sage mode, said attack's effectiveness and usability in battle would increase tenfold. He smirked and scratched his head dumbly, the whole entire training grounds destroyed. Ba-chan wouldn't be zero pleased to learn that he did it again. Despite the fact that it wasn't that huge of an issue, he shrugged it off as he gazed up at the fading blue sky. It was getting dark and he should probably get home. Or maybe he could stop by the hospital to greet Sakura for a second. He quickly dismissed that thought. She was probably super busy with paperwork or some sort of surgery. Seeing Sasuke was defiantly out of the question, he didn't dare step into the Uchiha compound. And so the sun-bleached-haired shinobi decided it would be in his best interest to head home. A shiver ran down his spine. He didn't exactly know why, but for a split second it felt as if someone was watching him. He shrugged the thought off. He was probably simply just tired. He yawned before grabbing his bag and quickly stretching. He took off, performing the body flicker technique, disappearing in a puff of smoke and landing neatly on a roof a small distance away from his apartment. The young shinobi dropped to the ground. Busy streets of the evening city. He decided to walk the rest of the way, take in the scenery of the village he came to love. He walked, his face full of joy and glee. Many villagers greeted him politely as he passed by. "Good afternoon, Naruto," one villager greeted him. He smiled at the man, responding with a greeting of his own. He's come to gain the trust of the villagers and its inhabitants since the years coming up. Team 7 making a name for themselves throughout the shinobi world, with their huge achievements which consisted of capturing Kabuto, to killing wanted members of the Akatsuki organization. Naruto took a left turn from the main road and headed down his less than busy street. Actually, if you think about it, it was actually pretty empty. Which wasn't weird at all, until his keen eyes picked up on very fast movement from their corners. He turned towards the shadows of which he knew he saw movement. And there it was again, the shiver. The feeling of being watched. He continued to walk, wishing that he was just being super paranoid. His apartment mere feet away. He knew better to trust his instincts, and his instincts were telling him someone or something was watching him. Just to be safe. The shinobi quickly activated his natural chakra, locating the position of said thing. His toad-like eyes narrowed. He picked up on multiple signatures, but what stood out the most was the fact that someone was trying to keep theirs concealed. If that were true, then that also made his latter thoughts also true. A dark figure took to the sky, dashing on the rooftops full speed. Naruto's hypothesis seemed to be correct. Someone had indeed been spying on him. He took to the rooftops, dashing towards the figure, giving chase. "Hey, stop," he called. He was curious as to what business this person had with him. It was rather suspicious. Who the hell was this guy? He caught up with the figure, clad in Anbu uniform and a mask. They still didn't trust him. Both ran parallel from each other, jumping from the rooftops at the same pace. "I think you have some explaining to do," he growled. The Anbu didn't respond with words, but a swift and dead accurate kunai aimed for Naruto's face. He dodged the metal as it grazed the hair on his side, barely missing the side of his face. This was serious. Here he was challenging an Anbu agent. The best of the best. Rational thought told him to stop and head back home, but something else, curiosity possibly, told him to keep chase and find out who, what, and why. Naruto withdrew 2 kunai from his pouch and shot them in the Anbu's direction. It quickly withdrew its katana, deflecting the weapons before stopping on a roof opposite Naruto. He stopped too, staring the shinobi down. "Alright, then." Naruto began towards the Anbu. "What business exactly do you have spying on me today?" His eyes rolled up and down the Anbu agent, taking its appearance. From what he could tell, the figure was a slender, tall female with long flowing jet black hair. Her facial features completely covered by that of her Anbu mask. Naruto made the first move, his kunai slashing at the female Anbu. She slid back, successfully avoiding his attack. This would be a fight without ninjutsu, else he wanted to damage the village and get into any more trouble than he probably already was. She retaliated with her katana, quickly slashing at Naruto, who blocked her barrage of attacks with his kunai, before sending a kick to the shinobi's chest. She fell back, performing a back flip before recovering. Naruto rushed her with a barrage of swift and carefully thrown fists, none of which actually connecting with the girl, and he soon found his arm being caught by the girl. "Shit," he muttered as she slammed him into the hard concrete of the rooftop. Katana dangerously close to his face, as her foot forcefully pinned his back to the ground. "I expected more from a member of Team 7, she spoke for the first time. The feminine voice spoke, sending shivers down Naruto's spine. He was holding back, of course. "Bastard, you have no idea what you're talking about." He recognized it from somewhere, but he just couldn't figure it out. Naruto pushed up, catching the female off guard, his physical strength proving to be superior to that of hers as he knocked her back. The kunoichi recovering instantly, but Naruto was fast on her kunai in hand. "Now let's see who's under that mask." He swiped his weapon in an attempt to remove the mask. But the female shinobi was quick and caught his wrist. She instantly sent a kick into his stomach, causing him to be pushed inches backward. He was quick on his feet. But as soon as he recovered, he was met by a katana stabbing straight into his arm. He felt the blood spill from his open wound. She was close enough. He quickly grabbed at the mask, tugging at it with lightning swift speed. He removed it. Was it that hard to realize? "Are you satisfied now?" she spoke, removing the weapon from his arm and backing away from the bleeding shinobi. Her face utterly unfazed by the removal of the mask. He held onto his wounded arm, narrowing his eyes. She was just stunning. Her face was pale and seemed to be flawless. Her charcoal black eyes complemented her black hair. He knew her from somewhere, but he couldn't exactly put his finger on it. "You must not recognize me, Oh well, this was pointless then. He remained still, memorized, as she disappeared in a puff of smoke, leaving a bleeding Naruto in the middle of the Leaf Village. Shit, what the hell? Naruto inquired, gazing at his bleeding arm. You're an idiot. You know that? Yeah, I know. Naruto sat rather contentedly in Sakura's apartment living room. Luckily her shift had ended little under 30 minutes ago, or else he would have had to run all the way towards the hospital while bleeding out. You don't just go around attacking random shinobi. Sakura scolded Naruto, as she forced her green chakra into his arm. She could have killed you. Hell, you could have bled out. What were you thinking? Naruto shook his head. I was just curious. Didn't I tell you she was spying on me? No shit? That's what they do, that's their job. They're always watching us, that's just how it is. She spat. Naruto scratched the back of his head. Well, now that you say it like that, it was kind of idiotic. You're hopeless. Do you know how much trouble you could get in for getting in their way? Said Sakura. But she was absolutely beautiful, so I consider that a win in my book. Sakura shook her head, obviously not wanting to press the conversation further. He chuckled a bit, rubbing the back of his head dumbly. I wouldn't mind meeting her again, actually. Her charcoal black eyes trailed the village elder, his face tan and unreadable. She bowed in a sign of respect. Don't be fooled by said actions, she hated him. Yes, she had total malice for this man, Danzo. The man who almost took everything from her. And it would have been by her hand too. Izumi, you look rather displaced. Came the deep, monotonous voice of the elder, that shook her from her thoughts. As if you were in some sort of tussle. Did he meet you with some sort of trouble? Yes. It seems I was careless and the target caught onto me. She explained. He remained silent for a second in thought. Izumi wanted nothing less than to get the hell out of there as fast as possible. Does he suspect anything? Indeed, she replied. His skills as a shinobi have increased significantly. Has he caught wind of why? No, of course not. He grunted in what seemed to be disagreement. Any suspicious activity? No, he's just been training. Like he has been for the past 8 years. I see. Continue with your objective. Report any and all suspicious activity. Hi. A month later the moon shined brightly. Its reflected rays the only visible light in the dark atmosphere of the sleeping village. Returning home from a previous mission, Izumi couldn't help but feel a small flame of joy burn within the inners of her chest and tummy. It was slight joy to say the most. She didn't exactly enjoy killing people, considering her passive-aggressive ideology, but it was what was required of the clan heir. To tell the truth, she'd much rather be on her usual duty, which was the main priority at the moment. Her team was needed though from time to time. Anbu Team 1, which consisted of Shisui, Neji, Shizune as their medic and, of course, Izumi the respective captain. Their mission was a simple assassination of a drug lord whose influence was increasing to sizes that were of a considerable threat to the general public. Especially since his money and manipulative nature enabled him to hire high-end shinobi of a rank or higher. To say the least, Izumi had underestimated the difficulty of the mission, and thus, the stealth aspect of it was a flunk. But despite said flunk, there were no considerable injuries to the team. Except for a small slash across Shisui's face, but it was little to nothing but a flesh wound. So, in the end, the mission was a success. The drug lord had been killed thanks to a heart injury via Shisui and his notorious and abnormally quick body flicker technique. Izumi had dismissed the 2 non-Uchiha members of the team, leaving her and Shisui to report the mission results to the Hokage. Both their paces slowed considerably as they approached the Godaime's office. She felt the familiar chakra signature of the Hokage herself. The Anbu captain's eyes narrowed, as she sensed 2 more familiar signatures. Shisui glanced at Izumi. A small, almost inaudible chuckle was released from his chest. As if he found something amusing. She ignored it though she had a much larger question. What were those 2 doing at a time like this? Was it earlier than her first preconception? She found herself on the small edge of the Hokage's window, it being open like usual. She entered, followed by a more than obviously giddy Shisui. Unprofessional. That's what it is, unprofessional, the 5th Hokage yelled in anger, her blonde hair slashing viscously as she pointed her finger, scolding the 2 shinobi. What in the fuck made you 2 think it'd be a good idea to have one of your rival battles while you're supposed to be escorting the daimyo's daughter? What stupid magical thoughts go through your thick ass heads that tell you that was the most appropriate time to test each other's abilities? The 2 Junin stood rigid. You know, it was more of an impulse than a thought, Ba-chan. The blonde known as Naruto spoke in his defense, scratching the back of his head while doing so. Like he always did when he was embarrassed. Just be quiet, responded an aggravated Sasuke. The three shinobi obviously not noticing the two Anbu operatives as she entered. Both Izumi and her cousin Shisui watched the exchange between the two members of Team 7 with curiosity. The latter of which seemed to be getting a really good kick out of said situation. Not only did you successfully ruin any chances of Leaf Village shinobi escorting her again, but you also managed to burn down their entire vacation home down completely. She paused, her eyes darting dangerously at the pair. And guess whose paycheck that's coming out of? Both ninja gulped at this, she noted. It was quite amusing watching the two members of one of the most elite Junin teams gaze on in complete angst. That's only the beginning of your punishment, Tsunade growled. Ah, come on Ba-chan. She silenced the blonde 17-year-old Junin with a finger. 6 months of all D-ranked missions. And both of you are getting revoked of your Junin rank. For 6 months. Naruto's jaw fell to the floor while a certain little brother held his head low. Shisui let out a brash and loud chuckle. The noise caused the blonde-haired Godem to turn her head towards the window, now noticing the jet black-haired Anbu captain and an amused Shisui in all their glory. Sasuke's eyes landed on her masked hidden features. From the look on his face, not only was he embarrassed but he also seemed to realize she was behind the mask. He lowered his head further in disgrace. Izumi's eye landed on that of the blonde. His face filled with an expression she couldn't exactly read. However, one thing was for certain. He too had recognized her. Wait, that's… the yellow-haired ninja began, but was swiftly silenced by his teammate, who of which whispered something that was inaudible to Izumi. He was a strange specimen, that was for sure. Shisui, what a pleasant surprise, Tsunade said sarcastically. And Izumi-san. She watched as Naruto's eyes went wide at the mention of her name. The Anbu captain raised an eyebrow in response, before deeming that matter of little importance. Izumi removed her mask, as she chose to ignore the blonde shinobi. How ironic. Oh, come on Hokage-sama. What's the point of the mask if you're just going to say my name? The Genjutsu master replied, removing his mask, exposing his bright grin. Most Anbu don't chuckle before entering my office. Also, try and break that habit of entering through my damn window, she retorted. Well then, don't leave it open. Shisui spoke confidently. Grin from eye to eye. This was normal behavior for the giddy Uchiha, of which only he could get away with. One could consider it disrespectful, but it was Shisui and everyone knew that he was different. Don't get Izumi wrong, he was loyal, powerful and infamously known throughout the shinobi world. The fifth Hokage glared at him but chose not to respond, her honey eyes trailing that of both Izumi and Shisui before glaring lethally at Sasuke and Naruto. 6 months of mandatory training, headed by both Izumi and Shisui, Tsunade declared. Neither Naruto nor Sasuke responded to this surprisingly. Sasuke simply gazed at both his cousin and sister respectively before returning to that of their Hokage. Naruto, on the other hand, had his eyes narrowed in her direction, he was glaring at her. Izumi gazed at his right arm. The wound was deep and probably required a certain amount of time to heal. That was apparent considering that he still had it in bandages. It must have taken him a while to put 2 and 2 together. 2 and 2 being that she was an Uchiha, and more importantly, the elder sister of Sasuke. Maybe he put it together, maybe not. Wait, training? This is news to me. Since when? Shisui inquired. Tsunade was clearly annoyed, since I decided, just now. I get to mold Sasuke-kun and his idiotic friend both mentally and physically for the next 6 months. He clasped his hands together. Yeah. Hear that, Izumi? The female Anbu captain chose to ignore said question. Will we still receive missions within that time period? Consider this a mission? But, yes, you'll still get pulled away for a mission every so often. Izumi simply nodded in response. This is effective immediately. Now, you two out. She pointed at Naruto and Sasuke, before turning her finger to both Shisui and Izumi. Report. Do you guys have to wake me up at godly late hours of the night when you wish to speak about your issues? Came the irritated voice of a certain Rosette. Both Naruto and Sasuke gazed at Sakura. It's sort of important, seeing that we can't go on any missions together for 6 months, Sakura, said a displeased Naruto who sat parallel to an equally displeased Sasuke. Well, that's both you idiots' fault, isn't it? Sakura yawned. Came the Uchiha's signature response. We have mandatory training for 6 months on top of the other shitty punishments. His eyes went to the floor as the thought of the Anbu agent suddenly made itself present. He had been such an oblivious idiotic doby. How didn't he recognize her? He'd seen her before, hell on more than one occasion. Albeit, in his defense, it was a few years ago. But regardless, he was an idiot. Sasuke's sister Izumi. It was her, that was the Anbu that had been watching him, stalking. He wondered, why? What had he done exactly? Was it an order by the Hokage or did she do it on a whim? His curiosity in the situation skyrocketing to unimaginable levels. He would find out soon enough, one way or another. After all, she was in charge of one of his punishments. He had to admit that she was way more beautiful when under direct light. With both my sister and cousin. Sasuke finally spoke. Naruto, do you understand what this means? Naruto shook himself from his thoughts. Oh, nah. They're going to kill us. Pissed, Naruto wasn't so sure. Death was definitely more inviting than this. You have a minute to get the fuck out of your bed or your brains hit the wall. Came the dry, unnaturally serious tone of a certain black spiky-haired Anbu. His katana mere slightly pressing the side of his face. Naruto gulped, the drowsiness no longer present, for good reason too. Shisui Uchiha of the Body Flicker was his title. He was greatly known throughout the shinobi world. His powers and effectiveness in battle clearly indicated his superiority to that of Naruto's. Anbu Team 1 had completed the most missions after all. Alright, damn. Interrupting my sleep. Threatening me and all this bullshit. Came the aggravated mutter of said Uzumaki. The katana ignited, flames devouring it. Naruto felt the heat emanating onto his face. He instantly reacted by grabbing a hidden dagger hidden within his sleeping wear, slashing the flaming weapon from his persona. The weapon remained in Shisui's hand, Naruto's attempts in vain. Alright, pass the dagger. The Body Flicker master held out his left hand while his flamed katana was still in his the right, ever so close. What did you think you were getting out if attacking your superior exactly, bastard? Came the blonde's reply as he tossed the dagger lightly towards a threatening Shisui. Now, as I recall, a certain blonde-haired, large-breast, easily angered Hokage order you and Sasuke-kun both to be put under our wing as per punishment, he began. Naruto noticing a small grin through the dark early morning of his apartment. Which reminded him, I know, but can't we do this like? He gazed at the clock beside his bed. It read 3:25 a.m. Later, number. Shit, we're doing this now. But, I literally only got 1 hour of sleep. The blonde retorted, 1 hour and 17 minutes to be precise. He concluded, remembering the time in which he returned from Sakura's house as opposed to the time now. Either get the hell up, or I promise you I'll slice you into small chips. Shisui's ultimatum and the dangerously close flaming sword were enough to convince the young Junin to comply. He nodded at the Anbu, submitting to his will. Now, we're about 13 minutes off schedule, thanks to your insubordination, he spoke, flaming disappearing slowly. Go get dressed, and meet us in training ground 14. Don't waste any more time than you've done already. There was nothing more said before Shisui vanished in a puff of smoke. Naruto grunted. He hadn't expected the punishment to begin so early. He was rather annoyed, irritated actually, and sleep deprived. But not only that, but also curious. He took off, not wanting to waste more time, heeding Shisui's warning. Dark chocolate eyes fell softly upon the two shinobi before them. Little brother and Naruto respectively, in that order. Both of them stood still and at attention as Shisui successfully chastised them, allowing his ranked over them to get the better. Izumi sighed, her eyes heavy as she felt old man consciousness slowly leaving the barracks of her mind. It had been roughly 48 hours since her last rest, and the sleep deprivation was beginning to take a toll on her. The mission had been longer than expected as stated prior. It would be worth it though, she was completing 2 missions at the same time. We have 110% control of both of you. Shit, we own both of you, 240%. For the next 6 months, I am your superior, for the next 6 months you will bow before me. You will not laugh, sleep, sneeze, nor will you eat without my permission. He was taking this very seriously, a small glare in his eyes that Izumi knew all too well. Do you two comprehend? Both Naruto and Sasuke hesitated, not understanding if he was joking or if he meant every aspect of his statement. I said, "Do you understand?" His voice lowered in pitch and became much louder. Hi. Now, mandatory training. He lifted his chin up in thought before turning towards Izumi. Izumi-chan, does 240 laps around the entire village seem okay? 240 laps? Are you shitting me? A frantic Naruto spat, obviously having no control over his tongue. Why was he complaining? Team 7 has definitely run much longer distances. It does seem sort of light if you ask me, Shisui stated, glaring at the loud blonde. Izumi watched the two Junin. It was apparent that they had a certain distaste for the work they were about to be exposed to. She'd fix that. Laziness wasn't acceptable. It seems like an acceptable routine, she spoke. Her eyes quickly found their way towards a certain blonde Jinchuriki. He was staring. She caught a glimpse of suspicion in his crystal blue orbs. And yet another look that she couldn't exactly put a finger on. It was strange and quickly become awkward. He broke away as soon as he realized she was glaring back. He obviously had questions, and if she knew him as well as she thought, he'd be more than willing to ask without hesitation. Alright, let's get to it, Anbu pace. We don't have time for that slow junk. The spiky-haired Uchiha cried, slamming his palms together in contentment. Move, get your asses running. Don't worry, we'll instruct by example. Come on, Sasuke-kun and friend. It's only been 240 laps and you're already on your fucking knees huffing and puffing. Shisui scolded the two young male shinobi who to Izumi, seemed almost half dead. They weren't used to such exercise that was obvious enough, especially considering that both Izumi and Shisui had barely broken a sweat. She wondered what type of exercises they did in the lower ranks. Anything below Anbu. It's impossible to do this at such a pace. Sasuke huffed, attempting to catch his breath. Yeah, how do you expect us to do it at such a quick pace? Naruto inquired. Are you high? You guys have gone on missions where you run at top speed for days upon days. Yeah, but that's a mission. It's necessary on a mission, cousin. Fuck it. Go. UUGH. They both replied. Dripping from head to toe in sweat, exhausted and aching. Naruto fell backward on the soft grass, laying with legs and arms widely spread out. Relief hitting him instantly as he rested his legs. Sasuke fell parallel beside the blonde. He glared at him from the corner of his eye. Blue and black eyes met. And with that simple glance, Naruto knew exactly what he was saying. How the fuck did we get ourselves in this mess? Alright, I'm impressed. I actually thought you two would have given up by the 170th lap. But you've pushed through, awesome. Sasuke's cousin Shisui praised them, sitting down in a meditated pose, perpendicular to Sasuke's sister. He seemed genially pleased, albeit Naruto wasn't sure if it was because of their progress or his own sadistic gain. Izumi on the other hand seemed unchanged from the moment he first saw her today. Alright. Well, Izumi-chan, I understand if you'd like to get little Sasuke-kun. So I'll get this idiot. Naruto tilted his head forwards towards the two resting Anbu. Excuse me? There's more, isn't there? Sasuke spoke irritably. Well, Izumi-chan thought it'd a great idea to evaluate you two's strength, and how awesome would it be to see how you two work under stress. Shisui gave both Naruto and Sasuke a huge wide grin that seemed to extend all the way towards his eyes. So Naruto looks slick. Actually, cousin, I'd like to evaluate Naruto-san. Came the impassive voice of the other female present. Her eyes remained closed and her face lacking any type of expression. Naruto's eyes widened. A bit, what could she possibly want? He knew it would be a great opportunity to get answers to his huge sum of questions. But what were her ulterior motives? Shisui's facial expression changed to that of surprise, awe even. He nodded before a sly smirk made its way prone onto his features. So, I get little Sasuke-kun. He clasped his hands together devilishly. This resulted in a certain Sasuke to gulp in response. Both Anbu brought themselves up to the ground and walked towards their respective foe. Shisui unleashed his katana, igniting. An inferno devours the sword. Izumi on the other hand took no action to grab her weapon. Naruto noted this. Underestimating me? He whispered the words only audible to himself. She was gonna hold back then, so would he. I get up if I were you too. We don't intend on showing mercy. The Genjutsu master, Shisui informed both members of Team 7. Naruto and Sasuke brought themselves to their feet. Don't get too overconfident, this won't be easy. Sasuke declared proudly towards his cousin, kunai finding its way to the Uchiha's palms. Naruto wondered if that was going to be the case, though he prayed it play close to that. We'll see about that. Mere moments after Shisui had finished his statement, he was on Sasuke slashing at the younger Uchiha. Attacking violently and with great speed. He really was showing no remorse, which means, Izumi stood feet away from Naruto. His eyes narrowed as he prepared himself for an impending attack. She stood motionlessly and with a blank expression, her hands unmoving at her sides. She looked rather innocent if she asked Naruto, he delicate features making her look rather cute if you would. But Naruto knew better than to base assumptions off of appearances and preconceptions. Izumi was the top Anbu captain in the whole entire village, that spoke for itself. She was the best of the best of the best. He refused to underestimate her, not this time at least. And it probably wouldn't hurt to try and get some answers in the process. Suddenly her right hand moved to her mouth, and without even a hand sign or any indication of her next actions, she released a huge blaze of fire from her mouth. Naruto's side slid away from the huge mass of fire. His hands grabbing two kunai from his pouch as he gained visual of his opponent. She stood in the same spot, despite the fact that she was now facing him. Naruto watched her feet, not chancing a look into her eyes. Even if she hadn't activated her Sharingan, which he knew she probably had, he didn't want to make any mistakes. He had to execute everything perfectly. She wasn't taking him seriously, he'd change that. He tossed his dual kunai at the female Anbu captain who of which in that instant released her katana before swiftly deflecting the deadly weapons. With this Naruto rushed forward, his hands coming together as he performed the hand signals to create his shadow clones. He only needed about 15. He summoned the shadow clones as they came upon Izumi. They attacked, fists attempting to hit the unnaturally quick female. She dodged barrages of kicks and punches from the clones, sending a few of her own successfully dispelling them. Naruto quickly summoned more, using them to gather wind chakra as he began to reform his signature Rasengan. Her back was towards him and he took his chance. He pounced forward leaving nothing to chance and he thrust his hands forward landing his attack on the Uchiha heir's back, and sending her flying, landing a short distance away. A smile of satisfaction fell upon Naruto, his eyes lighting up. It would do you better in the future, not to underestimate me, he yelled out as pride filled every fiber of his being. It all changed when he felt a chilling tickle go through his spine. He gazed back towards the spot where Izumi lay. His eyes widened. She was gone. He looked in all directions, left, right, up, down. Where had she gone off to? It didn't seem like a substitution nor did it look like a clone. In that instant, the sky turned black, and the sun a crimson red. Naruto choked out a cry as he found himself paralyzed. Not from fear, no by all means. But another force. Did you really think it'd be that easy, Naruto? A voice whispered. The voice obviously belonging to Izumi. Ah, Genjutsu, Naruto yelled in realization. He had little to no control over himself. His body was completely at her mercy. When, he cried out almost in anger. Her figure appeared before him, his body still frozen. From the moment you gazed into my Sharingan. But I didn't, or I don't remember. Effects of my Genjutsu, it's expected, she spoke. I control every aspect of this world. She trailed off, her voice sweet, sending shivers down his entire body. Her slender figure clad in her Anbu captain attire approached the paralyzed Naruto who had now realized his position. That position unexpectedly being him bound to a cross. She came close, more close than Naruto felt comfortable with, not that he was comfortable to begin with. He tried moving with every fiber of his being, as he felt his face heat up in embarrassment. Wrong place and wrong time. Izumi's stoic face was mere inches from Naruto's. As she came closer, Naruto's heart rate shot up like a firework. She whispered softly into his ear. I expected more. If she expected more, then you know what, Naruto would do exactly that. His breath was heavy, his crimson-red eyes swore daggers into that of his elder cousin. Both were tired and weary from their battle. Shisui stood, a small smile on his features. Sasuke couldn't exactly pinpoint what the smile meant, albeit he assumed to be of little importance. You seem to be faring much better than your blonde teammate. The spiked-haired Uchiha spoke. Let's finish this, shall we? He raised her hands up to gesturing for them to get back to business. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. If you would do the honor. The younger Uchiha needed not one more word. Within seconds, he was on the offensive. Sending a quick hurling Shisui's way, the Anbu operative barely was able to block his attack, which was followed by a heavy yet swift punch aimed for his face. Shisui sidestepped, being able to avoid the attack. Withdrawing a kunai from his pouch, he slashed at the Junin. Sasuke dodged the deadly attack, before revealing a kunai of his own, striking towards the elder Uchiha. The two kunai collided, creating a golden spark. He made a move to sweep Shisui off his feet with his legs. Shisui saw this and hurled into the air, his hands performing a quick set of signals. Sasuke's eyes widened as he realized his intentions. He jumped a few meters away, as a ball of fire plummeted towards the earth. He slid sideways on the grass, his hand giving him balance against the grass and dirt. Behind you. A humorous voice whispered in his ear. Said whisperer had used the body flicker technique. Sasuke's eyes widened as he turned around with only seconds to block a devastating kick that sent him flying. He skidded across the grass before recovering and bringing himself to his feet. He stood preparing to charge forward and show what he was truly made of. He concentrated chakra towards his hand as electricity began to engulf his palm. However, suddenly, he found a sharp, piercing object again his neck. Damn it! I think it's over, Sasuke. His Chidori slowly vanished. Shisui's figure behind that of Sasuke's kunai pressed comfortably towards his neck. There was no possible way he could escape. Sasuke was actually out of luck. Fuck, there was literally nothing he could do, lest he wished to lose his life. I give, Sasuke declared through his teeth. Pretty impressive, Sasuke-kun. Though more protection towards your midsection would probably make you more effective. Izumi looked at the blonde. He wasn't moving much, or was he attempting to do anything? He simply just stood rigid. Was he as good as she had first believed? Was it simply a false preconception and nothing more, or was he still the knucklehead ninja that she'd perceived from childhood, till now? The one person, if anyone, had the true will of fire. Suddenly his crystal blue eyes shot open, a grin earning its way on his handsome features. A flame burning like a wildfire. Without warning, the genjutsu had been disrupted. Izumi found her Sharingan eyes widening in shock and disbelief. You expect more, huh? Let's give these hands a try and see how much you actually expected. The blonde roared, as he threw a kuani her way. Her eyes narrowed. Was he underestimating her? Did he think a measly attack like that would be effective? Her hands jolted out with great speed, intercepting the kunai in her palms before it came into contact with the Uchiha air. Not the smartest of mauve. An object as hard as a rock came into contact with her face. Izumi soon realized this to be Naruto's fist. Shock shot through the Anbu captain. That was impossible. She dragged across the floor before finding balance and recovering to her feet. It's one of my dad's techniques, the flying thunder god, came the blonde's reply. She wiped her face, a slither of blood removed from her features. This changed the playing field significantly. She hadn't expected that, and if she had, she would have combated him with the same strategy she used against Shisui to begin with. He was behind her with little to no warning. She swiped the kunai that was aimed towards her neck away, making sure to keep it a short distance away. Noting that the kunai were the secret to his jutsu, he charged, slashing forward. She dodged, grabbing his arm and shoving him backward with a fist to his midsection. He grunted in pains as he swung a long leg her ways. She blocked the blow, being extremely heavy and pushing her back a few feet. She jumped forward, a kick aiming for his head. The blonde sidestepped before grabbing her leg and throwing the Uchiha female, who responded with a barrage of shuriken his way. He rolled, grabbing the kunai that was plunged into the grass, and deflected all of the deadly sharp fragments of metal with the weapon. The cling of metals colliding, ringing out through the field. He went for her again, throwing his kunai. She dodged it and allowed it to land behind her. He teleported to the weapon, and from there he sent a barrage of fists and kicks. The two exchanged attacks for a short while, before they broke off as Izumi kicked Naruto backward. She withdrew a kunai and lunged forward. Naruto, laying on the ground, rolled out of the way. To her surprise, he grabbed her by her arm and brought her down to the floor. She tried to push her weapon towards his throat, a feat which would have been a clear sign that she was victorious. However, that's not the case. With his superior strength, He grabbed the girl's wrists, forcefully pushing them down as he laid neatly on the girl. Her back against the grass as he lay frontwards upon the girl. She couldn't believe it had been that easy. She jerked forward in an attempt to escape but found that the very kunai in her hand was now poking her cheek. She gazed up at the sun-kissed haired shinobi. He was gazing down at her with a stern expression. They stayed in that position for a long term of time, Izumi waiting patiently for him to remove himself, which, unfortunately, wouldn't happen without her intervention. She cleared her throat. "Naruto," she began. "What? You may remove yourself from me now. You've won." His eyes widened in shock as he flustered red in embarrassment, realizing the position that they were in. Izumi simply raised an eyebrow. He quickly removed himself from her smaller figure. Both now stood. "Say what? You won." His blue eyes gleamed with something she couldn't pinpoint. "I won?" He spoke awe-filled. "Yes, that is what I said." She dusted her Anbu uniform off. "But, you're Izumi Uchiha. You never lose." She laughed internally. She wished that were true. "I've lost to Kakashi-san a large sum of times, in my earlier years. I usually tie with Shisui, albeit," she sighed. "You're an exceptional shinobi, Naruto." She spoke wholeheartedly, wishing not to say anything else. But the blonde would have nothing less. "Friends?" His hand went out towards the Anbu captain. She stared at it, her crimson Sharingan eyes still activated. "Come on, it's the least you can do. At least I'm not annoying you with questions from the day before." He had a point there. She didn't like being annoyed with questions. Her hand extended outward, grasping his, and shaking firmly. "Don't think I'll ease your workload. A punishment is still a punishment." A small smile plastered its way onto the Uchihas. It went unnoticed by Naruto, but it was in fact present. "You're kidding me, goddammit, you gotta be," Shisui inquired. He couldn't believe it. Hell, he refused. They stood outside the main Uchiha house, 30 minutes after the training with Sasuke and Naruto. "Do I look like someone to joke, Shisui?" She had a good point. Izumi rarely joked, if ever. Actually, he's never heard her crack or laugh at a joke ever. God, these kids, sooner or later they'll make us look like a flock of fluffy bunnies with their skills. She nodded in agreement. It was a quiet and passive day. Beautiful in every sense of the word. The raven-haired female lay in her room, quietly looking into the blue spring sky. Her charcoal eyes blank. It was her day off, evidently. Shisui had been sent off on an emergency Anbu mission which required his specific skill. Which explained why they were not training today. Which reminded her, both Sasuke and Naruto had made significant progress. Both of which were definitely gaining a new sense of responsibility, and she had successfully helped Naruto develop a new form of his Rasengan. She felt content with her work actually. Naruto had not disappointed her. He had actually defeated her, which was a great accomplishment for any shinobi of this era. But back to her day of. It was her day off and she had absolutely nothing to do. She never really did anything actually. She didn't have a personal life, nor did she have many friends. She did have admirers, but they weren't friends or anyone interesting. She sighed lightly, thinking about her ultimate mission. The one given to her on the behalf of Danzo. He couldn't believe he was doing this. He was crazy. He shook his head, almost walking away and leaving right then and there. He didn't wish to come all the way here just to be turned down. It just wasn't something he'd see as pleasant. However, he didn't see her replying to him with a yes. It was her day off after all. His blue eyes blinked as he sighed, deciding to finally do it. His hand came up as he knocked lightly on the door to the Uchiha head house. He knocked for a couple minutes before stopping and becoming vigilant. He waited, and after a few minutes, was anyone home? Sasuke even, maybe? To explain to him at least that she wasn't home or anything. Or maybe she was ignoring him. He was seconds away from leaving when the door finally opened. His day suddenly brightened up. Beautiful jet black eyes that equally complemented her long charcoal hair. She wore a blue shirt that wore the Uchiha crescent on it. Her eyebrows rose, staring into the blue of Naruto's. They stood there staring at each other for a long instant. "May I help you, Naruto?" inquired Izumi. Why was he here again? What had he wanted to do again? Shit, I know it's your day off and I don't mean to bother you on it, Izumi, but I was wondering if you could help me perfect my new Rasengan. He explained to the girl. That was part of the reason, actually. He just wanted to be around her. Over the time that he'd spent with the Anbu captain, her brother, his best friend and Shisui. Naruto had to admit that he'd developed something a bit more than infatuation. He needed to be around her, he wanted to know more about her personal life and possibly get to know her. He was curious about every aspect of the girl, especially about the incident a month ago. He couldn't tell the girl 5 years his senior, by all means no, it was well known that Izumi was beautiful, possibly the most beautiful girl in all of the village. That fact alone meant a lot, and if the rumors were true then she wasn't really interested in those of the opposite sex. Possibly asexual if you would. His mind was brought from his thoughts as she answered quicker than he expected. It's fine. Actually, I'm not doing anything better and would find it enjoyable to help you with your jutsu. She spoke, her voice sounding like a smooth rhythm to the Uzumaki's ears. He smiled as excitement ran through his body. All right, he cried, slamming a fist into his palm. It was probably louder than he intended, which would explain the stares he received from inside the Uchiha district. Izumi remained stoic as she walked outside, already fully dressed for training, and signaled for him to lead the way. Naruto, with a cheap grin and a scratch of his head, did so accordingly. Naruto sent his attack into the ground. A large explosion erupted in the training field following said attack. The Junin teleported away, avoiding the effects of his own attack. He landed parallel his kunai, via the Thunder God technique. This was his 4th time showing off his Rasen Shuriken, following Izumi's orders to repeat his attack. She watched a safe distance away, her arms wrapped neatly under her chest as she looked on with her usual unreadable expression. He was inhaling and exhaling heavily, as sweat ran like rapid rivers down his face and head. Her current posture and figure didn't help his situation either. Izumi called the Uzumaki over with a hand gesture. He approached her slowly, still feeling a bit overworked from the performance of his most powerful ninjutsu. Extremely high chakra levels allowing him to form another hearing distance away. The giant blue mass of wind in the shape of a shuriken hovered over his side in a gesture of confusion. Okay, throw it. It's definitely a landed upon the forest before him feet away. Rather risky. He watched as he threw the attack into the abundance of trees. It was definitely a risky technique, exploded devastating the trees. One that required him to use another to get its full capability. It's much more effective, especially if you're accurate. Why not throw it? If you utilize it this way, not only is it that much more devastating, but you won't waste your chakra. Her eyebrows went up in question. She spoke, somehow getting behind Naruto without how absolutely stupid he sounded. His blue eyes gazed upon her features. It was called the Rasen Shuriken. Her beauty was memorizing. Only Sheath glanced between his hand eventually and back to his hand. I did make it in the shape of a shuriken. God damn it, he was an idiot. He spoke with a small grin. Why she simply shook her head at the Junin. It was so obvious. She was such a quiet person, noticing that her eyes were still Sasuke inherited his personality from. He scratched his head as he prepared her about herself, and he just concentrated wind chakra to his hand. But how would he initiate in such another one of his attacks? Would you like to spar? He asked without really thinking, wanting some sort of response from her. She stood there for a moment, probably thinking about the proposal. You're not tired? You kidding me? That was just a warm-up. That was a total lie. He was actually pretty tired, but he had nothing to do for the rest of the afternoon. And this was possibly the only way to get to know her better. To think that he would feel this way about Sasuke's sister. Fine, she spoke bluntly. He smiled his signature goofy smile. Yes. Would you like it to attack first, Naruto? Yes. Actually, I would. He yelled as he attacked with great speed, sending his first attack, a punch, in her direction. She dodged the punch, grabbing the Junin by his arm and tossing him over her shoulder. He landed neatly a small distance away. He was already tired. It was definitely going to be harder than he thought. He lay on the ground, his arm forcefully pushed into his upper back and her hand forcefully holding his head down. Izumi had won the spar. Their first spar actually. The fight earlier wasn't a spar. Though she didn't feel as successful considering that the whole entire time he had been sluggish and much less enthusiastic. So she held back, just a little so the spar could last longer. In the end, she still won. Ah, alright. You win, he declared. She released the Uzumaki. She stood, bringing her hand down for him to grab, so she could lift him to his feet. He refused, as he turned onto his remained on the ground. I guess they call you the best for a reason, she shook her head. No, don't be modest. You were tired, it wasn't exactly a fair spar. It became quiet, the sky no longer held the presence of the sun, but instead that of a full moon and the stars beyond. He still laid there almost memorized with the sky. And so she did something he probably would never have expected her to do. She sat down next to him. He almost jumped as the realization hit him. His eyes tracing her figure, she noted. She said nothing, those of both genders usually did that to her. She guessed she must have looked odd to other people. She wasn't the most sociable, so she really didn't know what was acceptable via appearance, nor did she care. So there she sat, with the Uzumaki staring into the dark sky, tracing their eyes upon the infinite stars and the beautiful full moon. They laid for hours, both in respective silence. It was weird, she never exactly spent her days off with someone other than Shisui, and they never exactly did things like this. Except for sparring and training, but that was different. Her eyes glanced from the sky to the man beside her. His sun-kissed hair was darker due to the lack of light, but she could still see his face perfectly. Her eyes traced his lips and finally found its way to his jawline. His jawline was structured in such a way, it resembled that of a Nordic god. It was weird actually, she had never explored or rather investigated his face before. And that day Izumi realized that she really liked Naruto's jawline. It felt normal. Sasuke had to admit. Team 7 together again, just sitting enjoying their little get-together, eating their Naruto's favorite dish at the ramen shop. It was enjoyable. Well, for the most part. There had been a small disturbance. Mainly of a certain Uzumaki and his huge mouth. So the blonde had found himself face first into the ground, which a small bubble-gum-haired demon with green eyes mercilessly shaking him by his collar. Scolding him about. Who knows what. You can't say shit like that and not expect to get hit. No, I'm not small, I'm average size. Oh, he went there. Sasuke kept calm as he watched the exchange, Naruto begging for his life and pledging his apologies. He chose not to say anything about the exchange, wishing not to feel the wrath of the female. It's amazing how quickly he had forgotten how fucking crazy this pink-haired bitch. Emerald green eyes shot into Sasuke's jet black, malicious intent in those orbs. No. There was no way she could know his thoughts. He stared back, refusing to show his true emotions of fear, not breaking his gaze. Albeit, a small dribble of sweat made its way down the side of his face. You have something you want to say, Sasuke? Crazy. No, he replied as smooth as he could. His eyes made way to his best friend, who was still helplessly in her clutches. Naruto mouthed the words, "Help. Me, please." Sasuke mentally denied his request. The dobe was on his own. That's not what your facial expression says. How in the fuck could she tell? Really, he was as stoic as a dead door. Knob. And doors can't die. I've been around you Uchihas long enough to pick up on your facial expressions. Was the only thing he could respond with. It's 12:07, and I'd like to enjoy the rest of the afternoon, without an ignorant or stop comments. Sakura rose to her feet, dusting her clothing off. Wait. 12:07? Naruto sprinted to his feet, seeming to recover from the brutal attack. Sasuke slammed his palm into his face. Naruto. Man, I'm late. I go around this time every day. Late for what? Sasuke questioned, as Naruto frantically got to his feet and dusted off his orange and black attire. Go where? The bathroom. And with that Sasuke remembered that Sakura was an idiot. He stared the pinkett down. I don't think he meant the bathroom, Sakura. He spoke, as a matter of fact, shaking his head. Well, I don't know, he is sort of doing the pee-pee dance. As much as he hated to admit it, she did have a point. Naruto was currently jumping around in panic, drowning his ramen down in one gulp and getting ready to sprint away. Naruto, wait. Sasuke grabbed him by the wrist, stopping his dash. Just where are you going? The boy's face seemed to react to the question with an abundant amount of emotions, but let's analyze the most prompt one. Panic. Yes, he was panicking. For what reason? That's exactly what Sasuke was trying to figure out. I'm going to see a friend. Don't wait up for me. And, also, could either of you pay for my meal? Alright, thanks. Naruto slipped away, dashing off into the distance, seeming to head in the provided direction of the Uchiha compound. Something to note for later. Sasuke had almost forgotten how weird Naruto was. I'm not paying for him. Spoke the pink-haired female beside the Uchiha. So, Sasuke was paying for him was all he heard. He was breathing heavy, almost as if he had been running. She had expected him to come. He had done so at the same time every day for the past 2 weeks, even when they weren't exercising his punishment. It was routine by this time, But what she hadn't expected was the blonde boy to ask her if she wished to just walk around the village with him and hang out. Izumi could have declined. He wouldn't have questioned it, he was the one who requested her regardless, and she wasn't one to socialize let alone hang out. She could have easily went back to her quarters and returned to her slumber. However, she did quite the opposite. She was unaware of what had possessed her, or what impulse burst through her. But the Uchiha heir had politely accepted his request. Said blonde gave her a cheap smile. A smile that said he had made some sort of huge achievement. She followed him accordingly, allowing him to lead the way out of the Uchiha compound and into the streets of the Leaf Village. It was a bright and sunny spring afternoon, the temperature was perfect one could say. Villagers and shinobi alike traveled back and forth, their destinations unknown to the blonde and raven-haired pair. This feeling. The 17-year-old beside her spoke. She looked towards his direction, both keeping their pace. Don't you just get this feeling? Walking through this village, and just gazing at the innocence. Charcoal eyes went ahead of her, where a small civilian child and his mother happily sat at a ramen shop. Do you feel it, Izumi? He stopped, his face forming a small friendly smile. She stopped her pace, a few inches ahead of him. The reasonings why this? He pointed towards the ground, but she knew he was implying the village. This is so precious. Every single soul in this village is precious. This is why we try. The female Uchiha blinked, trying her best not to show her awe at his words, which were simple, yet profound. I'm just really trying to understand you a bit more, Izumi. You're so quiet and collective. He scratched the back of his head saying this. The world around Izumi seemed to stop or slow down to a considerable interval. There was so much more to this boy. This boy. Man she had monitored for the majority of her life. She was curious about him. This specimen. She had always been curious, but now it reached uncontainable levels. He seemed to have the heart and soul of fire. He seemed to be such a jester, and at first glance, you wouldn't believe him to the S-class shinobi he was. He never seemed to be defensive, he seemed to walk around as if he completely trusted everyone. As if everyone was his friend. I do feel it, Naruto. It's the feeling that every true shinobi gets at some point or another. She paused. We all get it, it shows our will of fire. They began walking again for a while, the pair quiet for a sum of time. Taking in the scenery of the village and its inhabitants. So, there's something that's been bugging me since I first met you. Naruto's voice came awkwardly. She spoke, still keeping to her quiet nature. That day, what were your reason or reasons for pursuing me that day? The question wasn't easy to answer. What could she say? That she'd been monitoring him since she was young and it was her mission to watch him and make sure he was of no threat to the village. Yeah, that would be bad for both of them. I was simply curious. She didn't mean for her answer to come out like that. Actually, she didn't even mean to answer at all. But she sort of spoke before thinking. What? Curious about what? Your training. I was curious about how one of the members of Team 7 trained. And I already know my brother's routine. I was simply interested in yours. It was true to a small extent, so it wasn't exactly a lie. He took this into deep consideration, his hands going into his pockets as they continued their stroll through the village. He didn't respond to her answer, he simply seemed to fall into a deep trance of thought. Izumi chose not to engage in conversation, she kept her mouth as silent as need be, but she continued to analyze the boy before her. They continued for a few minutes. The glares Izumi received did not go unnoticed by her, majority of which from that of the male population. She shrugged it off, of course. She cared little about people's insignificant opinions on her. They stopped upon a small ramen shop. He proposed that they get a small meal. She agreed before noting that Naruto had come here on multiple occasions. The Uchiha heir chose not to order anything at all, while Naruto, of course, ordered a bowl of ramen. The clerk making a comment on the lines of, back for seconds? Which did not go unnoticed by the black-haired female. All this time we've trained for the past few weeks and all, but we have never had an actual conversation. Like small talk. Naruto slurped down a trail of noodles. What would you like to talk about, Naruto? Your horrid table manners. She spoke, allowed a small visible grin to fall upon her features. Naruto's cheeks flushed with embarrassment as he scratched the back of his head, his blonde hair parting as he did so. Hey, it's not about how I eat, as long as it gets in, I'm fine. He slurped down another sum of noodles in triumph. But I mean I know little about you really. Except the stories I hear from Sasuke and almost everyone else. What stories? He devoured the rest of his meal, dumping the bowl of ramen into his mouth like a drain in a bathtub. Stories of how both you and Shisui defeated Orochimaru. How you're the prodigy and genius of our generation. How you became Anbu captain at the age of 13. That you and Anbu Team 1 have completed more successful S-class missions than any team in all the village. He stopped the praise of the Uchiha heir. That's what Sasuke told you. No, that's what everyone has told me. Sasuke's just obsessed with surpassing you and finally beating you in a spar. Izumi laughed in such a way that it could only be considered a giggle. He's close, really. He'll beat me eventually if he plays his cards right. The afternoon was slowly becoming the early evening as the sun's light began to dissipate. Silence followed again between the two. It was a content silence, albeit opposed to an awkward one. How'd you get that bruise above your eye? Were you training before coming to my house? Izumi surprisingly initiated conversation. She herself not understanding what pushed her to such a length. It was unlike the usually impassive female. The question seemed to crash into the boy like a brick wall. His eyes widening as he sat awkwardly in his seat. Yeah, you can say that. He scratched the back of his head and Izumi instantly knew he was lying. It was this day that Izumi realized that she was truly curious. Nice. The afternoon had been nice, every aspect of the word totally different from the shell she had been earlier. She enjoyed her time with the Uzumaki. He had politely asked to walk her home, which she countered with her own polite decline. But he was persistent and eventually ended up dropping her off home. She didn't argue with it. Her day had been interesting. However, responsibilities soon found their way back towards the heir's throat. Izumi. Came the stoic and demanding voice that she had hoped to avoid for a while. There was no running. Father, we need to talk, immediately. Naruto walked back home, a shadow of contentment over him. He slowly strolled to his apartment, thinking about the events that had transpired earlier. He really believed he was making progress with her. She was such a mystery, she was just perfect in every aspect. Her beauty and just her nature in general, he was truly infatuated with her. His thoughts seemed to be interrupted, as a cold shiver ran down his spine. It was like a sixth sense, the sense when you knew someone or something was following you. His hands immediately made its way towards his pouch, unleashing a kunai. A warm hand found its way towards his wrist, clasping it firmly and preventing it from moving any further. Whoa, there tiger, I'm not gonna hurt you. Came the familiar voice of the spiky-haired Uchiha. He released Naruto from his grip, allowing the 17-year-old to incline himself in Shisui's direction. Shit, man, I was about to stab the fuck out of you. What gives? Shisui shook his head. Oh, I've just been around Yano, jumping around checking out a few women and all. Spoke a confident Shisui. Naruto rolled his eyes at one of the people in charge of his punishment. And? Naruto retorted. Well, I don't know. While traveling from house to house checking out the variety of beautiful girls, you tend to see shit from time to time. And what I've seen today has really raised my interest, Naruto gulped. His eyes widened. Shit, you saw me get my ass beaten by Sakura, didn't you? Hey, she's strong as fuck. And he was cut off. No, I wasn't talking about that at all, though I did see her beat the fucking bricks off of you, but that's beside the point. I saw you and Izumi together, the entire day. Oh, that? That was worse. Friends can't just hang out. Listen, Naruto, she may have friend-zoned you or whatever. But the way you were looking at her today states otherwise on your part. But don't worry, I can help. Thanks for watching, guys.